right, we have got another jam-packed episode here, episode number 14 of the Retro Game Club podcast. I am Hugh, and this is Rob.
Lucky number 14.
It is.
Yeah.
We should be recording it on St. Patrick's Day or something.
Yeah. And we did not do anything confusing this time, like skip the number 13 and go to 14. This is a legit... Actually, this is not a legit 14, because we'd added episode 0.
Yes. So it's like 15, I guess. Because we do programming stuff, everything is 0 indexed.
Yes, exactly. And so what you been up to?
What have I been up to? My personal project over the past week has not been retro gaming related, but it's been getting Pi-hole installed and configured. Mm-hmm. So that's it's an ad blocking app you can put on a Raspberry Pi, where basically you turn your Raspberry Pi into a DNS server, and then you connect your router to the Pi and tell the router to use the address of the Raspberry Pi as the DNS server, and it basically kills all traffic to, I don't know, it comes with 140,000 domains pre-configured.
And you said your internet's noticeably faster or snappier?
Yes. Yeah, because unlike, if you use an ad blocker, use an ad blocker on our site, we don't care, we don't run ads.
Yeah.
Your browser is still going out to the internet and fetching that content, and then it's getting blocked at the browser. Mm-hmm. Whereas with a setup like Pi-hole, you say, please give me the DNS for, I don't know, Taboola.com or one of these other horrible ad companies. And instead of getting the IP address for Taboola.com, you get 0.0.00, whatever. And your computer makes no attempt to go get that obnoxious ad from Taboola.
So, funny question. Does your family care about this? Like, do they notice it faster? Do they say, thank you, Dad, for looking out for us? Or is it crickets?
No. One of them noted that they think Facebook is actually slower because of it. So I have to probably look into that. Not that I care, but I'm
that
guessing,
might be a good thing.
Yeah, there might be something going on there, but I don't know what. But I'll answer that later. In terms of gaming, I want to give a shout out to Nerd Noise Radio podcast, which I think there's actually a decent amount of overlap between listeners with us and them. They're a game music podcast, and they do an anniversary show. So every year they do anniversary of the podcast, which is end of June. And it's episode, do I get the number right? 45. Wait, season 1, 4, 5. So it's a best of compilation episode that they do, where people who listen to the podcast nominate songs from, that were played in the past 12 months to be included on the best of episode. Mm-hmm. And I sent a few in, and they were kind enough to include them. So hold on, I got to read the whole list here. There are 43 songs. What's this intro? So let's go 42 songs total on this best of, best things we played in the past year collection. And got some good stuff in there, like the Jaguar XJ 220. SegaCD soundtrack, which is a really massively underrated soundtrack.
We got some X Game Club games in here too.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide range. NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis. I just mentioned SegaCD.
Of course, lots of Mega Man and Metroid.
A lot of Mega Man and Metroid stuff. Yeah. So we'll probably find a way to include a link. Otherwise, just Google Nerd Noise Radio if you don't already listen to it, and download this episode. It's just it's good background music. Video game music is like the best music to work to.
Yeah. Nothing too distracting in there.
Yeah, not at all. So what about you? You mentioned anything good?
Work's been nuts. I started coding my some of my little projects again that never seem to get done. Not work projects, but personal projects in the Go language. And we have our SIO, our PS10. I guess it's a contest. Not really. We're just giving one away. That's live, so people talking about that on Facebook and an email. I'm excited for in a few episodes to pick a winner for that. And I noticed the other day, while looking at our podcast stats, which are doing really good, thank you everyone for listening, We have a lot of listeners in not America. Doing really good in Australia, some in Japan, all through Europe and Scandinavia and UK, and Canada. So,
Wait, is Portugal on that list? I don't look at stats, but I'm assuming it is because they have like a definitely a decent and kind of eclectic retro game community out there.
there, I'm logging in right now. Let me see.
Yeah, it's sort of weird. I mean, I listen to like this one podcast I like a lot is the Retro Hour, and they're based out of Britain, and they traveled like retro gaming conventions in Norway and in Poland, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I don't know how they do that.
they
No,
were talking
Spain
about
is the closest.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I gotta get in touch with some people there then. Gotta straighten that out. But yeah, they had Mega Drive, and then it's just they have, like I said, I know of like Portuguese retro gaming podcasts, so should definitely reach out to them.
We'll have
but
Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, Thailand, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Finland, Sweden, UK, and Spain.
Wow. Almost all of those are places I want to visit.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah.
The ones I don't want to visit are because it's too hot, not for any other reason.
But so thank you, Americans and not Americans, for listening to us. Please write in, tell us what your local retro gaming scene is like. I have no idea what retro gaming is like in Indonesia or Thailand. I have a pretty good idea about Japan.
Yeah, I have a pretty good idea there too.
Yeah. But yeah, that's about it. I think we have a great show ahead of us. We have so much news that we're actually tabling a lot of news items for our next episodes. So, good problem to have.
Yeah. Yeah, first one, I'm going to dive right in.
Yeah.
With, like the first one. And that is, this is not something that directly is a retro gaming story, but will be very soon. And that is the Raspberry Pi 4 was announced, which is hardware-wise not too different than a computer I was probably running 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even 10.
Yeah, maybe 10 years ago.
So this is it's a same low price, but substantially more power. Something that competes easily. I mean, you could run Windows 7 on the specs for this, I believe.
And, they switched to a USB-C charger port, which I really appreciate. That means almost everything I own is USB-C. 4 gigs of RAM. A much faster processor, but I was watching some YouTube benchmarks of it, and it's about, I think it was 23% faster for single thread and 27 for multi-thread. And it also has it's GPU for OpenGL, which is what like RetroArch uses, to display everything on the screen. Is much faster. So for retro gaming, this thing's kind of a beast.
Yeah, and I'm kind of impressed it has 2 HDMI port mini or whatever the spec is called. It's the smaller HDMI compatible port. So that's pretty slick. I use these at work to do like production monitoring boards, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sort of excited about being able to have fewer Raspberry Pis connected if I can get one with 2 HDMI out.
Yeah.
And I can repurpose those Pis for something else.
I did see one spec that's not... I should mention the article we have linked here is an Ars Technica. It was the first one I landed on, so giving them the credit. It did a spec between CPU cycles and MIPS and all that stuff between this and the cheapest i3 you could buy, Intel i3. And, the Intel still just annihilates this thing. But that one processor costs more than this whole thing,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're going to see some really great retro gaming projects come out of this. I think this is going to... I mean, it's a really substantial upgrade from the previous model. And I think they say they're going to sell it for they already like sort of announced like an end of life date, but it's many many years in the future. So I think we're going to see just a lot of great projects on this.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how the more difficult systems to emulate, like N64 and Saturn, work on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably approaching, enough hardware to probably even do a serviceable Dreamcast emulator.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I did not buy one of these because I have 3 RetroPies, and it's 3 because I gave one away recently, and I'm only using one of them. So it hurts me not to own one of these, but someday.
All right, so what else? New portable NES called the Retro Champ.
This is on IGN. They have a great video and a little review here. It's a 7-inch LCD handheld that you put NES and Famicom games into. It's like a Switch, but a bit fatter, taller, and wider. The screen is about the same size as a Switch.
It sort of cosmetically looks like the Nintendo 2DS, but with one screen.
Yeah, that's a good call.
The very kind of flat look, and looks like you can also use a wireless controller with it. It's obviously an emulator. I mean, this is obviously like an NES on a chip deal, so, typical good and bad parts of that. Good means, I guess, they could do stuff like save states on there or IPS patches, which we're going to talk about later. And the downside is, it's like the Hyperkin systems. The games are going to kind of look a little different. The colors are going to be maybe not completely right and that kind of stuff. So
3 to 5 hour battery life, and it's $79.
Yeah, when I looked at this, I said I might be willing to go to 100 on this, but I'm not going to go over 100.
It's a convenience thing. You don't have to hack anything. You don't have to get old firmware on a Vita or something. You just buy this, it shows up in the mail, and it works. And
yeah, and I have some other My Arcade products, and they're not bad. It depends. Like I have some other little miniature arcade machines. Some of them are really good. Others are kind of not good. So I won't say I'm like. I guess I put them on roughly the same level as Hyperkin in terms of quality. Like, I don't know. This is probably, I've also seen it in person. I guess if I see it in person, I'll be able to tell you.
Well, this one, it seems like IGN it thinks favorably of this.
Yeah, but I gotta see who wrote this IGN. I'm wondering if the person who wrote this was old enough to own an NES. That's what I have to find out first. Because
that's a good call.
They may just, not realize that they're playing something that looks a little different.
That's actually in our next, or not our next story, but in a few stories, I have the exact same feeling. Yeah. Anything else to say about that one?
Nope. I will reserve final judgment until I get a chance to see one in person.
Yeah. Next story, TurboGrafx-16's R-Type gets a conversion to SuperGrafx. So SuperGrafx is the updated TurboGrafx. It's kind of like it was supposed to kind of be the next gen TurboGrafx.
Yeah, but it's still kind of roughly the same hardware.
Yeah, it had more memory pretty much.
Yeah, little different CPU, but it was completely backwards compatible. So I liken it to the Atari 7800, The 78, actually, yeah. That's maybe an insult to the 7800, because the 7800 was a bigger jump from the 2600 and the SuperGrafx.
Maybe it's more of a PS Pro. Maybe this was the first half generation.
Yeah, kind of, because you could play all the original games on it, and you could hook up the original CD-ROM unit.
And you could play 5 extra games.
Yeah.
And only a few of them are good. But yeah, R-Type had, a lot of twitchy, glitchy graphics when you got a lot of sprites, because the maximum for the TG16 was 64. SuperGrafx bumps it up to 128. And this guy, he had been working on this for a long time, and then had some family stuff happen. This whole article, which is on Retro RGB, goes over it. And so he stopped for a while, but he finally released this out to the public, but it's only the first 4 stages.
Yeah, he says it's unfinished, but you can play this on an emulator for sure.
It looks great.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking I got to study the SuperGrafx or TurboGrafx a little bit because I've been working on this this Genesis demo for a while, and I'm kind of at a point like I sort of set myself a deadline of like finish the game, finish the main story, kind of get it to a stable, and it's not going to be a commercial game. I have no intention of ever asking for 1 cent for the thing because it's not very good. So it was just to, like I want to be done by this date. And then once I like set that date for myself, I found that I was getting things on it done much faster. And so now I'm like, a couple months ahead of where I expected to be. So I'll probably kind of put a wrap on that. And then I'm like, what do I want to do next? And I'm like, what retro system do I want to learn next? And the TurboGrafx CD is especially tempting because I don't want to mess. Like one of the parts that looks hardest to mess with is music. And if you write a demo for the TurboGrafx-16 CD, even though there's a lot of complexity in doing the CD part, I bet, I don't know that because I haven't looked at it, you have the liberty of putting, Redbook audio on, so you don't have to do any music programming.
And there's so many bands that release stuff under Creative Commons license now where if you just give them credit, you can use it,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
It's not like you have to become a producer.
Yeah, because I could actually take like this demo that I did for the Genesis and probably find a way to port the code from 68 to 6502 and then grab some public domain 80s music and we're all set. All set. So let's stick with the TurboGrafx. Oh, so I was going to mention, I was listening to the last episode of the Retro Hour, which is a podcast I really recommend a lot. They were talking about the TurboGrafx Mini, which we talked about last episode. And because they're from the UK, they had more or less never really seen a TurboGrafx or had very, very limited exposure to it. I didn't realize how like incredibly unpopular or unsuccessful the TurboGrafx was in UK because they could only name like 1 or 2 games for the system even. So it must have just never had any impact there.
I wonder if it was a PAL thing. Like there just weren't many PAL games released or... I mean, here we had TurboDirect really pushing it even after Hudson was done with and NEC were done with it,
Yeah, well, TurboDirect was an American company, so they were obviously were pushing it here. NEC was a Japanese company. And, Sega had a very strong European presence, so I think... it's all about which company markets to that territory. And Sega really went out of their way to market in Europe. And of course, in Europe, home computers, like gaming on early computers like the, Commodore and Spectrum was just, I think, bigger proportionately than it was in America. But anyhow, PC Mag has a great article, 7 Forgotten NEC TurboGrafx-16 Classics. And they actually mentioned, like, one of the first ones that comes to mind for me. If you were to tell me, like, hey, can you name some forgotten TurboGrafx games or underrated games, the first thing I would say is Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. That game is a just tremendous amount of fun.
And it's beautiful, yeah.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think the graphics may be a little goofy, but it is really, really fun. And then... yeah, they mentioned Utopia 2, which is all right.
That's on my list too. I want to endgame that one. I never have.
Okay. I did a very long time ago. They mentioned Double Dungeons, which I thought was kind of boring. But overall, I think it's a good list.
Yeah. Crater Maze, I've never played that one. And Magical Chase, the last HuCard game. That goes for $10,000 on eBay now. Yeah,
well, I don't think they're going to get that. That was at Midwest Gaming Classics, so everybody can take a drink right now.
So, I was going to say, this writer, Benji Edwards, I was wondering if he was old enough to have one of these, but I clicked on his name, and all of his PC Mag articles he wrote are retro gaming articles. So he seems like a pretty cool dude.
That's all the criteria you require.
That's
Pretty
it.
cool, dude.
It's hey, I'm a simple man. So he probably was. What do we got next here?
Oh, a very expensive item. The SegaCD MegaCD Fpga cartridge.
Yep,
Spelled with
a D.
Cardridge.
Yep. So this is the first shop that put this online, and they have it misspelled. So
Great.
this comes from the same people who released the Neo SD, which is the Neo Geo SD card, which is highly regarded. Some people think it's better than what Darksoft did with his. So I think this thing's pretty legit. It's getting a lot of buzz, a lot of good reviews.
The price, though, man. So basically, this is like a flash card that has, as the name implies, FPGA recreation of the Sega CD in an SD slot. So you can rip Sega CD games, right, and then put them onto this, and then it will play the games through Genesis hardware. So you can have a Genesis that does not have a Sega CD, and this basically does the emulation part. It would be kind of convenient, because you have one less power brick and all that kind of stuff, and region freedom, right? You can play games from any region. The downside is this thing right now is 232 euros.
And I don't think it's going to go down in price because like the Neo SD is still really expensive.
Which is, hold on, 263 United States dollars, and probably a lot of Canadian dollars. 345 Canadian dollars.
This thing has a lot of RAM, it has an ARM processor, an FPGA, and a 400 gig SD card. And if you put this in your Mega Drive or Genesis, it supports, the SD card also supports playing regular Genesis games. And if you have a 32X plugged in also, it also supports 32X games. So it's not like you can only just play Sega CD with this.
No.
So how much is the Sega EverDrive?
You have to wait. Let me make sure I understood that correctly. To play 32X CD games, it doesn't emulate the 32X. You have to have the 32X.
Exactly.
Yes.
You plug this thing into it. So
yeah, just to make sure people don't get like confused by that. You don't get a 32X emulator. But if you have the Sega Genesis and 32X, then you can play the CD games through this without the CD player.
Okay, so Stone Age Gamer has this for sale. They're an American company. It's where most people in the U.S. buy their EverDrives. They have it for $260.
Okay, so that checks out.
But you can get a Mega EverDrive, the newest one, for $100 less. Or you could get the very old one for $50.
Yeah, no, I do like to support, independent sites or smaller sites like Stone Age Gamer, but the EverDrive might be cheaper on Amazon. You might want if you're in the market for an EverDrive, because when I bought my EverDrive, I did a lot of comparison shopping and found that, unfortunately, Amazon was in fact the cheapest.
So wait, these EverDrives? Oh man, I may have to replace my EverDrive. It says, okay, they don't support. Sorry, I thought they were saying they do. Yeah, they don't support Sega CD. That's right.
Yeah. So I think this is really cool, but I would not spend that much on it. I would rather. I realize like maybe at some point every Sega CD on Earth will have some kind of mechanical failure, and this will be your only option. But that Polymega thing really was. How much was that?
Okay, so to get the deluxe Polymega bundle, let's see what's in that. You get the base unit with a wireless controller, the NES module, the SNES module, the Mega Drive and 32X module, and TurboGrafx. How much do you think that is?
$500.
Yep. Marked down from $539
Yeah,
to
I just remembered that's $500, and I should not have recommended that as an option.
But still, you get.
I mean, unless you want to. I mean, it's not bashing the system. Just I meant as a, if your goal is I want to play Sega CD games, right? Your options are get original hardware or now get this cartridge.
Yeah, and my whole thing with EverDrives is I get them because I can play on original hardware. It's not going to get goofy on me like a RetroPie or literally any emulation. And Polymega is emulation, so it may come with some convenience, but
yeah, but so is this cartridge, right?
Well,
it's a different type of emulation, but it's not.
It's not emulating for 32X and Mega Drive though. It's just the CD part.
It has to emulate because remember the Sega CD itself has a
RAM.
set of coprocessors.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
talking.
Yeah, the Sega CD part, it's doing a little bit of emulation, but at least that's FPGA.
So, speaking of stuff that's big in Europe,
Yeah.
it's a slick transition. There is a Dizzy scripting engine. So if you want to create your own Dizzy games for the ZX Spectrum, as we pronounce it here in the US, there's this tool. I guess it's been around for a while. We just haven't talked about it before. I'm talking about it now because there is a new edition, version 1.1. And yeah, you can use it to create. It's like Mario Maker, but for Dizzy.
So I've never played Dizzy. I've probably only played a few Spectrum games in my life.
I've only played the NES, Camerica version, or whoever, Color Dreams, whoever released the unlicensed Dizzy games in the US. I played those versions. And yeah, it's the thing, like, if you hadn't played Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, you'd be pretty impressed with it. Like, that's kind of my view. Like, it probably was pretty good for its time, but if you're playing it after you've played Super Mario 1 through 3, you're gonna be a little bit underwhelmed.
And the Spectrum had a weird color palette limitation, which is kind of an ironic name for it to have a pretty limited color palette. So yeah, it kind of looks a bit dated for the time, at least to me, But
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with it, so yeah.
Right, exactly, right.
No
What you
nostalgia
grew up with.
factor.
Yeah. You're not going to be nostalgic for something you didn't grow up with.
But I am nostalgic for the N64.
Yeah.
And Gadget has this week in tech history, Nintendo 64 goes on sale in Japan. And I remember being really jealous of everyone in Japan.
Yeah, they got it way before the US. This was maybe not the last system, but close to the last, where there was a really significant gap between America and Japan release dates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if I wonder if Sega releasing their consoles at the same time or close to the same time worldwide pushed Nintendo into doing that too, eventually.
Yeah, and of course people are just going to import it,
Yeah.
Like that was kind of the difference. I've probably talked about it before, but in 1990, if you were a gamer, you may not actually have really known that there was a Super Nintendo out yet.
Yeah.
If you weren't reading magazines, right? If you were, someone who enjoyed video games but wasn't reading the gaming magazines every week or every month, you may not have completely been aware that there was this new Nintendo system that you weren't getting.
I remember going to Toys R Us by our house and playing Mario 64 for the first time because they had it in a kiosk like a week before it was released. And Mario 64 is still in my top 5 games ever. And that first experience might be one of the reasons this is the new tier of gaming,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the PlayStation sold a lot better and, for some good reason, but
Yeah, sure, it has a better library and better controller and more games
but it wasn't a Silicon Graphics workstation on your TV.
No, I think like overall the PlayStation, like if you were on a desert island, you would almost have to pick the PlayStation, right? Because of the game libraries. Yeah. But if you were just to take like the top 5 games for each system, Nintendo 64 probably wins that competition against the PlayStation, or it's extremely close.
Yeah, but if you take the top 6, then PlayStation might win because
Right.
Nintendo doesn't have any more.
Yeah, if you took top 100, the PlayStation wins hands down. Certainly, if you like RPGs and Japanese RPGs specifically, the PlayStation is going to be a system you like better
Or
than
really
the Nintendo
bad
64.
2D fighting games that we never got here.
Let's see. Is this one you posted? Crazy Mario Zelda timeline mashup?
Yeah, so someone posted on CBR.com, are Mario games and Zelda in the same timeline? This theory may convince you. So the theory is, and I'm paraphrasing here, that after Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, the floodwaters receded in Hyrule, and the land was renamed to the Mushroom Kingdom because mushrooms are growing everywhere because that's what happens when things are left wet and out in the sun. And the Hylians turned into toadstools, Ganon turned into Bowser, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. I'm not sure about this.
Not convinced.
Yeah, now, like, some publishers, the problem is most of these game companies never start with any kind of time. I realize the person that wrote this was just trolling or high or something. But, most game companies, I don't think, really plan out these timelines in advance. I think Nintendo has done a lot of work to try and build a Zelda timeline around the first games. Breath of the Wild is sort of like the last Zelda game in the timeline, maybe?
Yeah, I think they said that, yeah.
And it's going to get a sequel, and maybe they just keep going forward from here and don't try to fit games into any particular era, which I would actually appreciate. Like, just make a good Zelda game. It doesn't have to be tied into the previous games.
Yeah, just like the Mario games.
Exactly, yeah. I'm a big Falcom fan. They, with like their sort of two mainline series, have done a little bit of weird. They've done a number of things that kind of place them in the same universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, it feels very forced when they do that.
This also goes into how Adventure Link and Super Mario Bros. 3 predominantly feature warp whistles and a few other things in there.
Yeah, but again, trolling or high. That could be a new game for like stuff you see on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like Reel or Onion.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a fun little read. I was sitting there on my couch reading it and giggling. The next one's kind of trolling also, I think.
Yeah, this Mario Battle Royale game that I'm sure by now has gotten a DMCA takedown notice.
Twice.
Yeah.
They renamed it to something else, and yeah, Nintendo's lawyers went after them hard.
So I guess it's the game. Yeah, they tried to reskin it with different characters, but you're not going to win. I mean, that's the problem. Like, you have to, as a publisher, if you don't enforce your, people think Nintendo's being a jerk here, but if you don't enforce your copyright, then it's kind of game on. Like, you're going to lose control of it very, very fast. And I think they're doing the right thing by saying I think for them it's the right business decision, because if you don't shut down every single project, eventually there's just going to be 100 Mario clones out there.
And you can play this now on the Switch, legit. There's no excuse. It's not like, oh, this is a rare game you guys aren't letting us play. Like, no, you can play it.
Yeah, and also this is Super Mario Brothers, which is
it's one of.
So really, if you have a good idea for a game, for a Nintendo fan game, start with your own. I mean, like I say all the time, start with your own assets, your own story. You can make something. Nintendo cannot copyright side-scrolling platformer. I mean, they definitely didn't invent the side-scrolling platformer. So go ahead and make the kind of game you want to make, but don't copy Nintendo stuff.
And so to kind of describe this to our listeners, it's Super Mario Brothers World, Super Mario Brothers, and it's a 75-person battle royale, meaning you all start at the same time, and everyone else that's not you is kind of a more transparent version of Mario, and you see what everyone else is doing. So it's kind of a race to the end. So if you're jumping around trying to get all the coins and stuff like that, you're going to lag behind the front of the pack, but I could see this kind of be funny trying once, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't really play games online.
Dr. Mario is coming to Android and iOS.
I don't know about a touch screen with this game.
Yeah, well, it's not really Dr. Mario either. It's called Dr. Mario, but the playstyle is quite different.
Oh, wow, this is very updated. I'm watching the video now.
Yeah. It's Dr. Mario kind of in name only. I mean, there are pills and there are tiles, but I mean, it's also got like bombs and worlds and do you want to purchase more gems?
Oh, yeah, microtransactions.
Yeah, no.
You could
Nope.
design your character,
Yes.
but
This is going to be
if
a
you
hard
want
pass for me.
some... What's that?
It's going to be a hard pass for me.
Well, if you want some nightmare fuel, the virus in this scream and yell. So watch the video with sound, and you may never sleep again. Something you never wanted. So, moving on.
Let's pivot back to the TurboGrafx again. Over on Nintendo Life, even though it's got Nintendo right there in the URL, they're doing a feature called The Making of the PC Engine. And as it implies, it's about the TurboGrafx-16 and then the hardware variants and some of the really great games that came out in Japan only, they mentioned too.
And it goes in, we've discussed this a few episodes ago, it goes into how Sega coin-op games just ended up on the on the PC Engine. And how this system was so cute and small in Japan, and how it was number one for a while.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it was very successful in Japan. It maybe been number one in America because I think it technically launched a day or two before the Genesis.
That's funny.
But it did not last very long. At least that lead did not last long. And yeah, I mean, there were a lot of games, like, I really think, like, the version of Street Fighter they had was as good as the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions at that same time, right? Mm-hmm. Not counting, like, Super Street Fighter and the later variations, but at the time that, the first iteration of Street Fighter games on home consoles, I think they had a pretty good version. Of course, they had a great Castlevania game, all these great RPGs, so it had potential to be more successful, but, it was up against two really, it was basically up against two really great consoles, so it's not a surprise that it didn't succeed in the US.
Yeah. Do you think Keith Courage had something to do with that? Where the other ones were, you do?
Yeah, I think as games to show off your system, if you look at like the pack-in games that came with each of those launch systems, like Altered Beast was not a very long game, and it wasn't a particularly great game, but it was a game that looked exactly like this arcade game that people knew. And it was visually and audibly a huge upgrade over 8-bit consoles. So it showed off the hardware really well, even if it wasn't a particularly deep game. And of course, Super Nintendo launched with Super Mario World, so it's got Mario in the title, and it's kind of my least favorite of the 2D Mario games. I'm sorry. Really, I've tried it 3 or 4 times now. I can just never really get into it.
So is Super Mario 3 your favorite of the 2D?
Yeah, Super Mario 3 is definitely my favorite. I like New Super Mario Bros. 2 a lot also. But Mario 3 and I like Mario 2 a lot. And then, Keith Courage next to them, just like the stages where you're in the robot suit are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not what the game starts with. It just doesn't make a good first impression for the system.
And it's a good game, but it's...
Yeah, the
it's
system,
not
like,
a Mario or a Sonic.
Yeah, if it had launched with, like, Splatterhouse as the pack-in game, that would have been kind of a bold statement, because you'd be saying, like, hey, this is a system that's more grown up than these other two systems.
Yeah, and that has big sprites, and it's a pretty game.
Visually impressive. Like, it would have been a completely different story for the TurboGrafx, perhaps, in our alternate reality world.
But great article, long article. So yeah, check that out.
So I guess if you want an acrylic incubator-looking Nintendo system, you can get one now, or make it yourself.
Yeah, so this is an article.
Geekology. Or Geekology? Let's call it
Geekology.
Like ecology, but with geek.
Yes. And this person made a very beautiful, with real hardware, Nintendo Entertainment System.
Mm-hmm.
And he picked your least favorite game to put inside of it.
Yeah, Rygar. Definitely not a great choice. He had some LED lights, which looks pretty cool. So this is the kind of thing you would see at like a game show, or displaying a game room. Kind of neat. I guess I don't like seeing perfectly good Nintendos destroyed, but he should have bought a Nintendo where the case was already mostly mangled.
Yeah. I'm looking through this video. I don't see the LED. Oh, he did put in LED lights. Okay. Yeah. That I'm not a fan of the LED lights. I don't know, but
see, I thought that was the best part.
But pretty cool,
All right.
Nothing else to say about it.
Yes. Last news article. We've got a lot of news, so we got to get through this last one here. PCGamesN.com has an article called Best Adventure Games on PC, and has a lot of LucasArts stuff.
Yes, and obviously one of them is Day of the Tentacle, which the re-release of that, which is fantastic because you can play and flip between the old way and the new way, art and play style, is for $2.70 on Steam right now. Anyway, so that was in here. What else? A lot of newer games like the Walking Dead games, which I tried and I wasn't really into. Life is Strange, one of my good buddies, keeps telling me to try that game out. Have you played that one?
No. I run Linux exclusively at this point, so I was actually thinking because
it's on PS4 and all that.
I still have a few Steam games on my backlog. I keep thinking I should buy like one of those like Intel compute sticks or something, just so I can play PC games. But I don't know.
Steam supports Wine now.
So Steam is dropping support for Ubuntu.
I think that's debated. I mean, they said they are going to, but
so
they backpedaled a little bit.
So I tried the Steam thing that allegedly plays Windows games, and after my computer completely locked up and had to be rebooted, I decided it maybe didn't work that well.
Yeah, probably good idea.
And I didn't start with a new game. I purposely picked an old game to start with. All right. Want to go into our featured topic, project, or interesting thing of the week?
Yeah, this one, this was yours.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. This is a fairly recent project, and I wanted to give it a shout out for our featured thing of the episode, and that is the 512 KB Final Fantasy III English translation. So the one that's really cool, the reason this is cool is there have been Final Fantasy III English translations for the NES before, but some of them don't run on like actual hardware, or they go over like the sort of max Nintendo cartridge size. Like they're not, they're emulator only things. They're not necessarily things you can print and run on put onto an SD card or play on a cartridge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a translation group here that did a new version of it where they keep the entire thing down to 512 KB. And there's a lot of text in game and a lot of graphics in the game, so that's pretty impressive. And then they used the text from the DS translation, kind of taking that as being like the canon translation.
Mm-hmm.
Used that as kind of the basis for this translation, cutting out a few things just again to stay within, the script limits. So like anything that was added to the NES translation, they did not. That wasn't in the original game, they did not go in and re-add here. And then they used, they renamed all the magic and items and jobs to match kind of Square's later naming convention. So it's all these names for spells and stuff that look like what you'd see in Final Fantasy 5, 6, 7, 8, so on. Basically sticking with the standard names that they've had in later games. And Final Fantasy 3 is kind of a cool game. I mean, I played through it on DS. It's very hard. It is a game where, like, I got to the last boss, died horribly, like so badly where I thought there's no change in battle strategy I can make to win this fight. So I had to go back to a previous save and just spend another 3 hours essentially grinding my characters up to then make another run at the last boss.
Nice.
I did finally finish the game, but it's a very hard game. But it uses like a very flexible job system, similar to what's in Bravely Default or Final Fantasy V, where your characters are fluid and you can change their class based on the situation. So it's a good game. I've never played any of the NES translations, at least not past like the does that boot kind of stage.
What's this DTE compression they're talking about? Do you know what that means?
It's just a text compression algorithm. That's all. It's just dictionary text. Don't ask what the E stands for.
So I don't understand. So does it take a text file to binary, or does it take it?
Well, it's really not different than it's no different than like a zip algorithm, right? Like I have a string, and you're doing a dictionary substitution, right? So you're taking commonly occurring words, and substituting them for. So everywhere instead of the word the, I have the number 1.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So there's a dictionary table, and you're looking up the words against the dictionary. So it's kind of it's just there to reduce the size of the game. Like, I mean, this little Genesis demo I've been working on has a lot of text, right? Because I'm not very good at writing stuff, so when the characters talk, they use far more words than they need to communicate simple ideas. But I haven't gotten to the point where I'm exceeding the Genesis cartridge limit. Like, I kind of put some checks in there to make sure I don't go over cart size. But I can see pretty quickly, like I'm definitely over 512K of data in that little demo. So I could see why, for like an NES game where there's a lot of text, you're going to need to do compression. Most Genesis games do not do text compression, well, at least the ones I've done like ROM editors for, because you can easily fit first of all, like 512K of text is a lot of text. Like you sit down today and try and write a text file up to 512K of words. I mean, you're going to be at it a long time. So, but this is 512K. That also includes like all the monster sprites and all the towns and the big overworld. And it's a fairly big game. I mean, this is about as big of an RPG as you can put on the NES.
And after all that, it's 99.97% the size as the Japanese version.
Yes.
So it's actually smaller.
The nice thing is with this is you can probably, I haven't looked into it yet, but I bet you can, if you buy a Famicom cartridge, I bet you can just run the IPS patch on this. Like I see, and right now Famicom cart, the cheapest one on eBay is $4.25. Because again, the text is all in Japanese.
Yeah.
So you can get that, and if you can do an IPS patch, you can actually play this on original hardware. Like that's kind of what this.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
that's a really good idea.
All right, you want to talk about games of the episode?
Game Club.
Yes.
Yeah. I went with Ristar. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly because I have never heard it pronounced by anyone else. So let's just go with that. Yeah, this was a very late Genesis release, and it was originally, I don't want to say designed, maybe, well, Yuji Naka from Sonic the Hedgehog fame kind of came up with this first, and you can tell. So apparently, before Sonic was a hedgehog, the idea was of a rabbit that would pull enemies toward, grab enemies with the rabbit's ears and pull them towards them to kind of hit them, almost like a rabbit ear headbutt. And that went away when Sonic got really fast and needed to roll around and into a ball. and he reused, or his team, I guess is more accurate, reused those mechanics for Ristar. So you are a star with a face and arms and legs that runs around and kind of body slams yourself against enemies. This looks a lot like Sonic. The text and the before and after level information stuff look. I mean,
Now-
it's exact.
Yeah, it is built on the Sonic 1 game engine.
Yeah.
So, like, it aesthetically looks like a Sonic the Hedgehog game. Like, the palette's a little bit darker, maybe. The background's a little bit, and I don't mean dark as in evil. I just mean, like, it's a little darker shaded. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, if you just swapped out, like, the main sprite, like, you would have, you'd have a Sonic game.
Totally. Yeah. And even when you there's a bar you could grab onto, and there's two in each level. One for a secret, almost bonk adventure type bonus round, and another to, it's the end of the level. You get out of there to the next place, and you spin around really fast on it and shoot yourself either to the right of the screen or to the top of the screen, and that feels like a Sonic spin. But I really enjoy this game. I played this on in RetroArch on my Vita, mostly, a little bit on the computer. Played great. Pretty flawless. The music is fantastic. Great looking game. I got almost all the way through it. I think I was 1 or 2 episodes away from the end, and or level 1 or 2 levels away from the end, and I really can't say enough nice things about this game. It's charming. It's fun. Once you get the mechanics down, you can just kind of zone out and play this game and have a great time. I did not play this back in the day.
Yeah, neither did I. I was working at the game store, and it came in, and it was one of those, like, late, like you mentioned, it was a late release because it was a cardboard box game, which was always, like, I didn't like when they released, $50 games in, like, these really cheap boxes. I don't know why that bothered me so much back then. But, I mean, like, Super Nintendo games were in cardboard boxes too, but they were a little more durable than what Sega had switched to. But I just kind of thought, oh, this is a Sonic ripoff and whatever. I didn't really think about it too much. And then, when you brought it up, I played it on the Genesis, one of my Genesis collections.
Yeah, yep.
And it's all right. I mean, like, it took me a while to get used to the mechanics because it's sort of the whole, like, grip thing. Like, this guy has incredible grip strength. So it took me a little while to realize that's how you move around the world. I probably played 15, 20 minutes into it. I thought it was kind of fun. Probably not something I'm going to play all the way through, but it was definitely better than I was expecting. I mean, I was kind of thinking it was going to be a sort of average platformer, and it's pretty good, and that's probably, again, due to it being a Sonic derivative.
Yeah. The box art probably didn't help either back in the day. It kind of looks like a game for kids, which, I mean, it could be for kids, but it doesn't seem like it's targeted towards,
Yeah, the difficulty's high enough that I would say it's probably not targeted towards little kids.
What else? Yeah, it's funny. You could buy this game now for the Switch on the Genesis Classics collection, which I have. I have a legit copy of this game, and I still played a ROM, so...
I have multiple copies of it on collections. I'm noticing here there's also a Brazil release.
Yeah.
Like a lot of late Genesis games that got a Tech Toy release.
Yeah, so not much more to say on this. I highly recommend it. Great, fun game club game.
Yeah. So my game was Faxanadu, or Fuzzanadu, however you want to pronounce it. I'm going to stick with Faxanadu because it's how I've always pronounced it. And it's often compared to Zelda 2. It's from a series that predates Zelda 2, but I understand the comparison because it's like hey, here's a side-scrolling game where you're going to towns and you're talking to people and buying weapons and upgrading them, and you gain experience points to level up and stuff. So like that's again it's easiest to compare it to. It's kind of an odd game. I hadn't played it in a very long time, and playing it again, I thought, yeah, this would be pretty hard for someone. Like if you'd never played this game back in the day, you would probably play this for 10 minutes and then think, not my thing. And part of it is like it starts off kind of rough. Like the game sort of you get to this first town, and the game tells you to go visit the king. And most platforming games, you start off by scrolling to the right, and that just leads to a dead end. And then going to the left, you're like basically going into like a level with enemies and stuff. And you're like, well, that can't be the right way. But it turns out it is. So like it doesn't really like hold your hand a lot in the beginning. But then once you get going, I mean, it's still kind of fun. What I did for fun was I just tried out different passwords. So there's a lot of passwords where like you start off with every item, or you're at the end of the game with every item. And those are kind of fun to play around with too, to just kind of be all powerful and blast through it. I know I did finish this game back in the day. I did not finish it this time. But I did play around enough just to kind of see like, how is this similar to the modern games that, carry the same name? And there really isn't any similarities. I mean, a couple enemies, there's like some enemy design that is maybe, they've stuck around with for a while, but they're kind of like archetype enemies. So you could find enemies like them in a variety of other games too, I guess. So like overall it was kind of neat to go back and look at again. I probably won't do another complete playthrough of it unless someone does a really, really solid remake.
Do you think the Fa and Faxanadu could be for Famicom?
Yeah, that's what I believe. I've heard that theory before, that Famicom has a series called Xanadu, and that this was the Famicom Xanadu. That's my belief of how it's supposed to be pronounced. But again, like this goes back to like if you bought this game in 1988 US, you may not have ever heard the word Famicom before.
Good point. Yeah.
You can laugh at that. Like people can think I'm making a comical point, but I'm not. Like 1988. Let's go back to 1988 and ask 1988 kids. We'll do like a one of those kids react to videos. We'll time travel and say 1988 kids. Have you heard of the Famicom?
I only heard about it after they announced the Super Famicom, and Game Pro and EGN were talking about that, and that Nintendo was called the Famicom. Now there's a Super Famicom. That's the only way I knew about that.
So yeah. Now the so the soundtrack is still pretty memorable. That's about it. It has a pretty famous composer who I'm gonna mispronounce, Jun Chikuma. No, Jun. How would you pronounce this name? Jun Chikuma. Is that right? But she's worked on a lot of games in the 80s. Everything from NES. Did a block of like PC Engine games. I'm guessing like the Bomberman main tune is probably the game song of hers that's most well known. So that's another kind of thing. Famicom always hired really great musicians for their games. They had a really good string of musicians, and this one I think the soundtrack actually does pretty well. I know like on Overclocked Remix, there's some really cool remixes from this game.
So I didn't, like you said, if you didn't play this back in the day, you probably wouldn't get into it now, and I really didn't, and it just it didn't hold my hand enough. I think I might be a little spoiled now.
Yeah, I get you.
And I even think I remember it. I think I rented this one, and it was one where I got home and I was like, oh, I'm not having fun with this. I want a fast, fun weekend game, Yeah.
All right. Do you want to do some listener feedback?
Yeah, we got Jason wrote us. He's enjoying the new show. He specifically likes the technical info. Thank you for that feedback, because it helps us know what really to talk about. And in Hugh's old podcast, he spoke highly of East, and is excited to hear that East Book 1 and 2 are going to be on the TurboGrafx Mini. And he was wondering if it would still be a good time for someone who has never played it to jump into it. And even though he's asking you, I'm giving 2 thumbs up for that. The bump mechanics become actually pretty fun, especially when you start attacking a lot of demons at the same time.
Yeah, when you're trying to do some grinding at the end of the game, it is. Now, one way, if you're not a fan of that, though, is I know in the current summer Steam sale, basically every Falcom PC game is on sale right now, including East 1 and 2 Chronicles, where I believe in that version you have the option of turning off bump and using a button to slash, to do a sword slash, making it play a little bit more like a Zelda game, a little bit more. So you can change, and the modern versions, you can change that. And of course, the later games, East 3 was a different style game. East 4 went back to the bump mechanic, and then starting with 5 on, they got rid of it. So if you're playing the original games, but if you're doing the remakes or the modern versions on Steam, you have more options, and those might be a little more accessible. The only real difference is like the modern versions, East Chronicles especially, East 1 Chronicles at least, the difficulty is quite a bit higher than the TurboGrafx version for whatever reason.
And assuming, Jason, you're dipping your toe in when you get the TurboGrafx Mini, you're going to be playing, I think this is, top 10, top 15 games ever for me. I've played through East Book 1 and 2 many times. There's a lot of, not a lot, but you'll find yourself wondering where to go next. Don't be afraid to just kind of Google it, and so you know what order to do the game in and kind of what level you should be at for which bosses. Because that's a very East mechanic is get to X level for this boss, and you'll know right when you get there.
Yeah, there's a huge, like, the level system. A boss that completely destroys you when you're level 15, you're going to be like evenly matched with at level 16, and then you will completely destroy them if you get to level 17.
Yeah, and depending on how late game you are, grinding to get those levels could be anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours. Depending,
yeah. It's sort of like there's sort of a pacing. If you kind of pace it right, you don't really have to do a lot of grinding. Rick writes us to talk about the Raspberry Pi in the Intelligent Flashback, and he says he's done it before, and I think we should extend the invitation for him to come on the show sometime, and we talk about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that'd be a great topic. I would definitely like to hear about his experiences, and I'd like to hear how like the controllers work and the quality and all that stuff, because I like my Intelligent Flashback, but if this turns out to be a not complicated project, I may be willing to, sacrifice it to get a system that has every Intellivision game on it. Even though the Flashback has such a great selection, it's hard.
Yeah. And Joe writes us, congratulating us and getting past the double digits. Thank you very much. We did it. He likes Dr. Mario. He actually likes it better than Tetris. He did see the mobile game is out, so he'll check it out. King of Monsters, he can't remember which version he played back in the day in the arcade, but he pretty much just spent 5 minutes mashing the buttons on it. And he links, I'll put this in the episode show notes, it's almost like a game fact for King of Monsters 2, but on steroids, where it has a picture of every power-up and pretty much everything you could do, see, and touch in the game. It's really impressive. And that's for King of Monsters 2. For Faxanadu, he played it briefly. It seemed alright. And he thought Ristar was fun. He played the Game Gear version on vacation when Howard Johnson had free Game Gear rental offer. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. I don't remember personally. I remember hearing about that.
If it's like the Howard Johnson like hotel.
Yeah, the hotel. They had like a Game Gear promotion.
Oh man, I hope you Lysol that thing off before you touched it.
Well, yeah,
Like anything in a hotel.
yeah, and I, I, I don't want to, besmirch a potential sponsor, maybe distant relative, but I don't remember Howard Johnson's having a particularly good reputation to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, even when I go into nice hotels, I clean off remote controls and stuff like that, just because. Anyway, a different topic though. He thinks the Japanese Mega Drive had the best version of Ristar. So I actually found Ristar by searching for Game Gear games because we really haven't had many on here, and it on many lists ranked in the top few. And I actually didn't play it. I should go back and check out that version. Yeah, so thank you, Joe, for that email. We have Majors writes in about our E3 news from last episode. He agrees that the TurboGrafx-16 Mini is really the best thing that came out of this E3, and the fact that it has CD games on it makes it seem really promising.
I do like his comment here about PyCard and, about hacking up perfectly good NES games. And he says, the world's not going to miss another basis loaded cartridge. And I guess that's true. It's just if I was going to do this, I'd want a cartridge that looked cool. I do have a sealed copy of Basis Loaded. If anyone's, wants to make me an offer on that bad boy, I paid $1 for it. And, I'm looking to flip that for a good profit here.
Are there any baseball games and the answer is no for me. Are there any baseball games you really like? Like, well, this is
generic. Well, no, yeah, the Wii Sports baseball's all right. It's 3 innings.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You can play with your kids. It's kind of fun. There's no like having to chase the ball down. Like you hit it, and however far you hit it, it either just automatically awards you a single or double or home run. There's just, I realize it's like the least accurate baseball simulation of all time, but it's fun.
Maybe Neo Geo Super Baseball 2020.
Yeah. Again, think of like an arcade style game, right? Not a baseball simulation. I get if you're really into baseball, I can understand the appeal of a baseball simulation, but I'm kind of not. And baseball is one of those sports where you definitely don't want to have a game that's like paced the same as the real sport.
And well, I this weekend, I actually 2 days ago, I took my son to his first Detroit Tigers game, and I'm not a big sports guy, but I want to expose my son to everything, let him pick out what he likes, and I think he agreed with me that he liked being at the stadium, but after 2 innings, it's time to go do something else. I feel that way about baseball games too. Anyway.
Yeah, he also mentions a home kind of hacking project he made based on some like a big giant ChemLab carrying case that was then repurposed to house PCBs. I have to see what this thing looks like to understand what he's describing because I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I read this paragraph a few times.
Lets us know there's a homebrew hacked Intellivision ROM of Tron 3-in-1. So it's the 3 Tron games all, I guess, on one cartridge, which would, one of those games is a lot of fun.
Discs of Tron?
Yeah, Discs of Tron. That's a decent. The Intellivision version is, it's different than the arcade game, but it's a fun game by itself. It's just it's a completely fun game. The other 2 I was never a big fan of. And then we talked a little bit about like having the Tron cabinets, these repro cabinets, and it says he's mentioning that the cabinet has a spinner. You could probably make the spinner the trigger button if you if it supported like push down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that's possible. I don't see that being comfortable.
And as for games of the week, he was a fan of Ristar, or perhaps it's pronounced Ristar. and like me, has only ever played it on a collection. And Faxanadu, he also rented it. So there you go. And recalls it being heavily promoted in Nintendo Power, and I remember that too. And he thought it was okay, but never really went back to it. And didn't really know, until he was into the TurboGrafx or PC Engine, of its ties to the other Xanadu games. Which, of course, I didn't either. And as a matter of fact, it was well after I was into the TurboGrafx that I learned that Falcom hit me. Because again, how are you going to get this information in the 90s? Like, how would you possibly know that there's this company called Falcom that produced these games? Remember, the Falcom games, when they came out to America, all had different company names on them. Like, you would see Falcom somewhere in the title of the game, somewhere, but they were always branded in big letters some other company.
Yeah.
And then he wants to mention he just got back from Too Many Games and is heading out to an event called CEO Next. What is that? Oh, Consumer Electronics? No, it's not the CE. No. Can't use acronyms because I'm not very fast on my feet with these. If you Google CEO, you're not going to find anything.
Oh, CEO Gaming.
CEO Gaming. There you go. Home to the largest fighting game convention and tournament series in the world. Daytona Beach, June 28th through 30th in Daytona Beach. So if you're listening to this, it is too late to go. Also, if it's in terms of drinking games, we're going to talk about Midwest weather here for a second. It was like 89 degrees or something out here today. Daytona Beach must therefore be 120 based on my understanding of the world. So I suppose this is all indoors, but man, no thanks.
Wow, this looks great.
It does. Beautiful location. Other than it being 110 degrees. But they've.
It looks like there's a DDR competition if you wanna.
Yeah.
If you want to dive in on that.
A lot of cabinets. Oh man, this is a huge list of cabinets. So this looks pretty cool. They got CEOgaming.org. Yeah. Now what they got to do is they got to move this out to like February if they're going to keep it in Daytona, and then I don't know if they take requests for that kind of stuff, but that to me would be the best time to go that far south. And looks like the Red Bull's a sponsor and a bunch of other stuff. So,
all right, Nature's goes to all the fun stuff.
Yeah. What games are we going to be talking about next? So people can email us their thoughts about them. And what do they email us at? What's the email address?
So, first of all, thank you, everyone, for your emails. You are all enrolled in the SIO, the PS10 giveaway, which is the SD cart mod for your PlayStation. Email us at retrogameclub.net. Email at retrogameclub.net. And about anything. Email us from other countries. Email us about retro projects you're working on, your favorite games, topic ideas.
Or how about our next games?
Yes, so, or any games, really.
Yeah.
If you listen to old episodes and you play some of those games, still tell us about it, what you thought about them. For the next episode, I'm choosing F-Zero on the SNES because that was a system seller for me. It's why I wanted that system.
It's good. It gives me an excuse to play the Super Nintendo Classic. I'm going to go with Lock and Chase.
I'm excited to dive into that one.
I kind of grew up on the Intellivision version of that game. Really liked it a lot. And again, being kind of a kid who wasn't completely in tune with the world, I didn't really know it was an arcade game because I never saw the arcade version. And I only got into the arcade version later. So there's other versions too. And there's like a Game Boy version that's kind of different-ish. But I would recommend if you're going to try this, the Intellivision version, which you might have on a collection already, or the arcade version. Are good ones to start with.
Cool. Yeah. So if you play those or any other retro games, please email us at retrogameclub.net and join our game club.
Yes.
So I think that's it.
So thanks for listening.